Good afternoon. My name is Mike Dean, and I've been involved in the business community for the last several years now, and what I do is I help train and coach business people and businesses how to change, bring about change in their businesses and in their lives so that they become more successful. How does that apply to end youth violence? Well, what we've done is we believe that the initiatives and programs that we have been using in the business community can be also used in end youth violence to help empower the different organizations and youth themselves to bring about change. The question that we ask in the business community is, when you take two people that are in the same job, take the same courses, go to the same motivational seminars, read the same books, how does one become successful and the other one follow status quo? The question that we ask in end youth violence is, why is that we can have two people come out of the same neighborhoods, play on the same sports teams, and have the same friends but lead totally opposite lives? This is where we believe that the changes we can bring about are going to affect end youth violence as well. So the answer to that question is, it's all about their mindset. It's not that they're taking different programs or courses or learning different things. It's about how they perceive the things that they're seeing and understanding. That's basically their mindset. So what is it? Well, to understand what mindset is, we have to understand the four realms of the existence that we live in. One of the first realms is our mental. Okay, we live in a mental state, our mind. Secondly is our emotional. Emotional things that how we become sad or happier creates results in our lives. Thirdly, spiritual. Now, I'm not here to change what you believe, whether you're religious or not religious, talk about God or anything else, but we do have, on a molecular level, a spiritual connection to everything that goes on around us. And in some business communities and some walks, it's called the law of attraction, the power of intention. Call it what you will. We'll just leave it as spiritual for now. And the fourth realm is the physical, what goes on outside around us, that we actually can have some control over. So in other words, what that means is what goes on inside of us, our inner world creates our outer world. So how does that work? Well, let's call that the process of manifestation. What happens, what goes on inside of us is a result of what goes on outside of us, around us. So the process of manifestation is basically a formula. And what that formula is, T leads to F leads to A equals R. What does that mean? Well, that means that our thoughts lead to our feelings. Our feelings lead to actions. And our actions lead to results. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take that one step further. We're going to rewrite that formula, and what we've done is that formula now reads P leads to T leads to F leads to A equals R. What does that mean? What it says is that our programming leads to our thoughts. Our thoughts lead to our feelings lead to our actions, which end in the results that go on around us. So where does our programming come from? Well, our programming comes from many different things. It comes from our parents, it comes from our teachers, our friends, what's going on in our home, what's going on in our community, what's happening around us, news that we're watching, commercials, video games that the kids are playing, the programming that they're watching, the cartoons, whatever it is. Everything that happens around us becomes part of who we are and becomes our programming. And that's what we're going to be dealing with. We're going to be dealing with the programming and changing that programming. So, we are conditioned or programmed in three different ways. The first way is verbally. Things that we've heard. Modeling, things that we've seen. And thirdly, specific incidences, things that we've experienced. Those are the three areas, as we have the three keys, the home, the community, and the school. We have three areas, different ways that we are conditioned or programmed. So the million-dollar question is, how do we change our programming? First of all, through awareness. We need to become aware that there's an issue and that we need change in the way we're programmed or the way the youth are programmed. Secondly, we have to understand how the programming or the things that have gone on in their life up to the point that they're at now is affecting the results that they're producing today. Thirdly, once we understand what that programming is, and the negative effects that that programming has on their lives, we need to teach them how to disassociate from that programming. And then the next step is declaration. And what that means is we are now, once we've disassociated from the negative aspects of the programming that leads us to the negative results that we're having today, same within the business world. If you're not getting the results that you're looking for, then something needs to change. The way you're doing it needs to change. Well, here's an example. You ever hear the expression that in the heat of the moment, the true you shows? That's because the programming inside of you, your subconscious mind, reacts. And when you react, you usually react on past experiences because you're designed in a way to take all your experiences that you've had to this point and release them in the current situation that you're in. So what we're doing is we're declaring that there's going to be change in a new you or a new youth. In other words, T. Harv Eker in his book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind says where attention goes, energy flows and results show. And what that means is that we need to change where the energy and attention of these youth are going so that we can change the results. In other words, we always get exactly what we're looking for. And there's a little bit of humor on the side. That's exactly the truth. You ever notice sometimes when you have a thought about something, you usually very quickly get that result? That's the same thing that we're dealing with here. That's the spiritual connection that we have with what goes on around us. We always get what we're asking for. And if we want to change what we're getting, we need to change the programming within us. In the business community, we have an expression that says we are the sum of the people we surround ourselves with. In other words, if you want to get rich, you surround yourself with rich people. You develop rich habits. What we do in our programming or our initiatives is we rephrase that expression. And what we do is we say the people around us are a reflection of what's going on inside of us. In other words, we are taking responsibility for what's going on around us as opposed to being victims of our past. That's the program changing that we're doing. So by rephrasing it, we're taking control of the situation instead of being controlled. And that's what we're teaching the youth, or training the youth, or the programs that deal with these youth to do. Change how you look at the situation and where your programming is coming from, and taking control of the situation instead of being the result of your past. How do we do this? Right now, you have at your disposal the most powerful computer in the world, your subconscious mind. Whether you realize it or not, the things that happen in your life are happening for a reason. Good, bad, indifferent, prosperous, unsuccessful, whatever it is, it happens as a result of what goes on in your subconscious mind. It can provide you with the result you want in any area of your life: health, personal, business, financial, relationships, sports. You've heard stories of a mother in a car crash all of a sudden gaining superhuman power and lifting a car off their kid trapped underneath it. Where does this come from? All of a sudden, the Superman, Superwoman? Of course not. We have powers within us that are totally untapped. And what we do is we try to teach people how to use those powers to change, bring about change in their life. And that's what we want to teach these kids. All you have to do is program it to provide you with the desired result that you want. So in other words, to open the doors to change, let me give you a quick analogy. Let me give you a quick analogy. If you have a tree, let's say an apple tree that produces apples, and that apple tree is producing rotten apples, but taking the apples off and throwing the apples away is not going to bring you new, fresh apples. You're more than likely going to get rotten apples again. And they're going to keep producing rotten apples. And why do they keep producing rotten apples? The reason is that what's being fed into that tree through its roots, the soil that it's in, the irrigation, the sunlight that it's getting, everything that's being put into that tree is producing what's coming out of it, rotten fruit. So what we need to do to produce good fruit is we need to change what's going into that tree. In other words, we need to change the roots of the tree. So what we do is we need to train the brain in our situation to control the roots that produce the fruits. And that's what we are looking at doing with end youth violence in changing the programming and helping different organizations and youth change the way they think, as opposed to throwing away the key. And we don't, to this point, we haven't got results. We're looking for results. And that's what our initiatives are going to be, and that's what we're helping with in Youth Violence. Thank you.